the breeding methods of old versus new. That's the question, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Old versus new. When you're talking basically in dogs, especially the bull breeds that we're in, old versus new, the difference would be money. I mean, in the old days, there wasn't that importance of monetary gain. So when I'm talking about, modern people that just have pet quality dogs. If you were breeding a dog, breeding a litter of pups, they would use, that word that's taboo today. They would cull heavily. I mean, for example, you can see some countrymen today. I knew a guy the other day, he had a litter of Yag Terriers. He kept the 3 out of the 8 that he wanted and put an end to the rest. And that's, he had pups, he had what he needed, and the rest, went in the ground. So that's the old way of selection. I'm going to be working my dogs, working my line, whether it be terriers, whether it be bulldogs, whether it be fighting dogs, whether it be whatever. I will breed for myself and maybe a few close friends, and I will select what I need, and the rest I don't need. So the rest is culled. Today, the breeding methods is I may well breed a litter of 8, and why would I cull 5 of the 8 when I can sell them all for $1,000 a piece? You see what I mean? So, unfortunately, the spectre of money came into the equation, and it changed everything. It changed the dynamic. So that's one of the easiest ways of explaining it. I mean, again, it depends what breed that we're discussing. If you're going to be talking about, running dogs, for example, for the traveling families, again, they would keep what they needed in the old days, or they might, give pups to other people, other families and friends, but they were to be worked. And again, we're talking about working dogs. If the dog didn't work, then, it didn't get very far. You're not going to feed a dog when, you can barely feed your family. So this goes part of the old selection methods. I mean, today, this is why you had the real working dogs are anti Kennel Club and whatever is it the AKC in the States. Those, the working breeds are against that, because every time the kennel clubs get involved with working breed, it suddenly becomes fashionable and the prices go up and the quality goes down. So, most people, real workers, shy away from that. They want dogs that can carry out a task and, whether it be digging badgers or, culling foxes, or, they want dogs that are useful. The moment that you go over to the kennel club type stuff, and the Yag Terrier is a good example. I mean, working Yag Terriers now go for up to €1,500 a piece in some places, which is crazy, because you risk, every time you go out on a hunt, you risk the life of your dog, so that can become an expensive hobby. If you're putting €1,000 into a dog, you're not going to risk that he's going to get killed on his first hunt. So a lot of people buy these working breeds with kennel club certificates and pedigrees, and they never work them because obviously they're too precious to work. So then obviously the quality starts going down. But what I often hear today, which is quite funny but sad in a way, is the term, the French would say rentable. When people buy a dog, they see it as an investment and they want to get a return on investment. So very often they'll buy a female thinking in their heads, well, in a year or 2, I will have pups and then I'll sell those pups and then I'll make X amount of money. So they're not going to risk this female working and maybe getting killed, because that's obviously a very poor return on investment. So what they'll do is they'll keep the dog to one side and they'll breed it. And then when people say, the other dogs worked, or the parents worked, or in the pedigree it's full of workers, but they don't themselves work. So very quickly the lines suddenly become sort of diluted, and that's where we are today. So in the old days, I think the selection was raw, was basically what we need, and what we don't need goes in the ground. And today, everybody's out to make a dollar. So the selection's not that. How many times have you seen a litter of 8 or 10 pups and they're all champions? People say, there's not a bad one in the litter. They're all great. Yeah, take your pick. They're all winners. So, again, that's, I think, it's a sign of the times. Today, everything has a value. There's not just a dog. There is a certain value to this. And it's not just in dogs. I mean, it's in, I was talking to a guy the other day who was selling racing pigeons for sort of 50 grand, 60 grand. I mean, incredible. You're talking about a pigeon. No, racing pigeon, stupid prices. So again, when people are talking about $1,000 or $2,000 for a dog, not quite in the same league, but you can see where we're going.
Right.
Everything has a value.
The importance of standard, how does that relate to
the standard? That's an interesting one, because people get hooked up on this standard. Now, what people should understand is a standard is a guideline. All right, I'll say it again. A standard is a guideline. It's not gospel. It's not black and white. It's a guide to help breeders to adhere to what will be a typical specimen of that race. It's the same, for example, it's open to interpretation. So you'll read the standard, and there are basic guidelines to adhere to, as in height and maybe color and maybe pigmentation and maybe dentition. So there are things to adhere to, but you shouldn't get caught up into, if there's a slight problem, for example, a dog that may be slightly undershot, throw it out with the bathwater. For one fault, you can condemn a dog and say, no, it's no good, it doesn't fit the standard. People need to realize that it's only a guideline. You can go up, you can sway either side of the guidelines, just don't go too far. Yeah. And this is where the experienced judges are important, because an experienced judge will look at the overall animal. I mean, anybody will tell you that even a perfect dog has a minimum of 3 faults. So a good judge, or somebody who's worth his salt, will look and will not turn a blind eye, but will say, well, even though the dog's a little bit on the tall side, it's balanced. Mm-hmm. It screams type. That, for me, is the best dog of the day. I mean, I once judged, I was helping Abe Harkness judge. And Abe Harkness once put a dog up that, for me, from afar, looked sort of banal. It didn't look very, it looked average. And he said to me, yeah, but it looks average, but when you get your hands on it, it's as sound as a bell. As sound as a bell. And that stuck with me, because, you should see from afar that the dog looks like a typical example of the race. You don't need to go into detail with the standard. But again, it depends. For example, in all other countries, you haven't got a thing called the confirmation. In France, you've got a thing called confirmation, which basically means at 12 months of age, your dog goes before a judge, and the judge tells you if it's a good dog or not. Okay, it's complete bullshit. It's just another money-making scheme from the Kennel Club. You have a guy who's not a specialist. But what they do is they take out the measuring stick and they measure your dog. And if your dog maybe is a centimetre over what it should be in the standard, it gets thrown out. You are no longer allowed to breed from that animal because this person decided there's a centimetre in it. You know? And again, the standard, we're back to being open to interpretation. If a dog is slightly undershot, we're talking Staffordshire Bull Terriers here. If a Staffordshire Bull Terrier is slightly undershot, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can breed out a fault within 2 generations. Slightly undershot, again, is the open to interpretation. You say, okay, and a good judge will say, yeah, his teeth aren't great. Maybe if you mate him one day, you should think about using a dog with a better dentition. That will help the breed. But in France, what they'll do is they'll say, no, the dog is undershot, out, finished. You can't breed from it, sterilize your dog, it's finished. So the standard, if you like, people should it's like anything. It's like the Bible or the Quran. It's open to interpretation. My vision of the standard is probably not the same as yours, yet the standard remains the same. It's written on paper. But what I see, and my idea of the perfect Stafford or Bulldog or whatever, probably isn't, I'm pretty sure, the same as yours. And that's what makes it interesting. You see, so again, standard is a guideline. It should be open to interpretation. I saw Sarah Hemstock wrote on a page on Facebook the other day. She wrote that it's the overall dog. It's exactly that. It's the overall dog. It's not any one point. So a standard will assist a breeder into breeding towards something which should be a typical Stafford or whatever we're talking about. So it's interesting because people talk about standards. Your dog's not standard, but standard for you probably isn't standard for me. Where are we saying with it? So again, it should be taken in context and not out of context. From my experience, the Kennel Club, especially in the UK and the Canine Central in France, are there for business. It's all about the money. It's about, was it Don King or P.T. Barnum said, it's all about bums on seats.
Right.
So you want as many people attending the dog shows. You want to, get through as many litters as you can. I saw again another debate today about blue Staffordshire Bull Terriers in England. There are so many people breeding blues now that blue has suddenly become the colour, and the other colours now are considered rare. So they're putting together a petition to the Kennel Club to say, can we ban this colour from the breed, from the standard? Quite honestly, I don't think they ever will, because it's business. You know what I mean? It's all about registrations. It's all about money, ticket money. So you've got the Kennel Clubs, the AKC, the KC, the SEC, all these people. You only have to go and visit their buildings, whether it be London or Paris, and you get an idea of how much money is involved. Mm-hmm. For example, the Kennel Club in France is what they call an association. An association is something that doesn't make a profit. So when you see the size of the building and the price they charge, you think, how can they reinvest that money? How can they not make a profit? Yeah. Anyway, so, and then you're back to the clubs. Now, breed clubs is a good idea, but unfortunately we are dealing with people and fragile egos and money again. And what happens with breed clubs is very often maybe people get voted in. We're back to the old boys club, the chums. People get voted in that maybe lack a little bit of experience. And then they start to, dictate and give out rules. And I'm talking again about the Stafford Club in France, for example. They try and dictate to incoming judges what they can and can't do. They give a directive which isn't official, but they make it known that when judging, we don't put up any blues, or we don't do this, or any dog's too tall. So they can bring in directives which it kind of affect the whole thing, and you get this clique mentality. Now in France, again, I talk about France because that's 25 years I've been here. What I noticed that in France you can only have one club, one breed club that's recognised. You can't have several. So if you don't get on with the people in it, tough, that's it. For example, in the UK, there can be 20 or 30 Stafford clubs. So if you don't appreciate how the club is being run, well, you go 50 miles up the road and you can join another club. You see what I mean? So it's a little bit different. So if you're talking about who's responsible for maybe, not ruining the breeds, but not really promoting what's important, I say the clubs are responsible at a small level with the clique mentality, and you scratch my back and I scratch yours, because we're back to the same thing again. It's all about money. They want to sell pups, and they want, any customers come to the club, they get funneled off to their friends. You see what I mean? So it becomes a small clique. And then when you get above that, obviously kennel clubs and the people that control all that, it's all about money. It's all about money. So the good of the breed, it depends. If you kick up enough stink, maybe, as in the UK, the British Bulldog, I think they changed the standard at one point, only because there was petitions online and there was such a stink, they had no choice. But what they'll normally do is they close their eyes and they just keep cashing in until there is a huge problem. And when there is a huge problem, they will publicly address the issue. Between action and reaction, there's often many, many years of waiting. So, to answer your question, I would say that, if you look at the working men, the guys that hunt their dogs, etc., they avoid like the plague anything that's club or sort of, official orientated. So you can see both sides. In 1990, I was a member of a Stafford club, and it was a wonderful place. It was very, you had Anne Gattenby that's just passed away, bless her. She used to make big cakes, and there used to be urns of tea on the go, and it was a nice place to be. But over the years, it's kind of degenerated, and I talk about France as well. Right at the beginning in France, when I turned up in France in 1994, there was 74 Staffords in France and maybe 4 breeders. And most of the 74 was spread out amongst these 4 breeders. And the shows at the time were a nice place to be. You would go to a show and people would bring a bag in a box of wine and some beers in a cooler and sandwiches and charcuterie, and it was very pleasant. The people there with their dogs, and they would discuss, and it was a very, very nice, pleasant atmosphere. And it didn't take long for the cliques to arrive. You got, the breeders from the north turned up, and they decided to set their cages up away from the sort of nucleus in the middle. And then it became their people, their clientele would cheer them on in the ring. And it became the competitive spirit, but in the sort of negative sense. It doesn't take long for it to degenerate from everybody having a nice time to, well, this guy won last, and did you hear about him and her? And then it gets personal. It happens in, horses, dogs, pigeons. It happens in all walks of life. But it's a shame that, something that could be positive. We spoke about this before, something that could be like a family event, something very light-hearted, suddenly gets very nasty and backstabbing, not a nice place to be. So a lot of good people, and I've seen it down the years, a lot of good people, well-meaning people, leave the dog scene because they're fed up with all this crap, you know? They're thinking, you know, a working man will work all week and he's going to spend, you know, for his family to go to a dog show at the weekend, and there's nothing but negative. So this is another reason why, you know, attendance numbers have dwindled over the years, because, you know, it's become, you know, plus Facebook and social media, that hasn't helped things. So, you know, the dog world is a very strange place. So there's no one person to blame, and, you know, the clubs have got their responsibility, kennel clubs above them, others. But like I say, I mean, we're talking just about the general thing. We're not even talking about the quality of the dogs. We're talking about the sort of general consensus now. So, but I mean, then if you get deeper, obviously, if there's this clique involved, it's going to affect the quality of the dogs. I remember in the UK, there was a certain dog that won everything. That was a big-headed dog, exaggerated, but he was, you know, the owner was a member of the club and he was well respected, and so the newcomers all used their dogs with this stud dog that was very exaggerated. And the repercussions, even today, we're going 20 years on, you've got this particular dog in nearly all the pedigrees. You know, and it wasn't because it was a good dog, it was because he won a lot because of, you know, again, political influence or whatever you want to call it. And so, yes, you have this detrimental effect on the breed, not because of the dog itself, it's because of who was on the other end of the lead. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say blame, but you can see why things happen like they do or like they did. See what I mean? But it depends what you're after. I mean, if you're looking at the Terrier shows, I mean, the Terrier shows are very popular in the UK. And it's not necessarily kennel club run, you know, their own little clubs, and it's the working dogs, and they're judged by somebody who's well known in the breed, well respected, you know, some guy that actually works his dog, so he knows what he's talking about. And they have their own registries, whether it be handwritten or, you know, printed out with their own little logos, and they sort of potter on, you know, quite happily. You know, I know a lot of sort of working clubs that get on like that, and they invite judges in, and it's low key. Again, you often hear about, you know, most terriers, working terriers, some are sold off, but most are gifted to other friends because it's the importance of the line. And again, the proof is in the pudding. If the dog works, he's a good one. He's then put to a bitch that works, and then we cross our fingers that in the pups there'll be something else that carries on that line and works. So you've got that way of it's suddenly the monetary value, you're getting something for your money. Now, when you're in a beauty pageant or a beauty contest, the dog looks very nice, but, you know, does he throw like him? You know, is he a good stud, or is it a good bitch? Character in the standard is written, but you can't really judge it in a beauty pageant, you know. You know, all the other things, temperament, everything you want. How does the dog look like in the field? What does a dog look like at work, or, you know, in the middle of doing some sport? You don't see that when he goes once or twice up the carpet in the show ring. All you can judge is if he's pretty or not. That's it. Is it a good-looking dog? Does he look like the standard? Does he look like a typical example of the breed? So, in a way, the clubs, it's money for old rope. You know, they put out some trophies, and, you know, when they say, well, you know, this judge is worth his money, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for everything around the breed. Now, if you're looking for starting an individual club, there are many. For example, in the Old English Bulldog world, there are many Bulldog clubs that put on little weekend shows, but they break even. They're not there to make money. they put on the shows and the stands, and they rent the land, and they do the publicity, and they bring in maybe 50 or 100 people. Everyone has a good time, and they all go away. They don't make much money out of it. So the business side is less interesting, if you like. But again, if somebody shows their dogs and they are good examples of the breed and they look good, then, as John F. Gordon said, if you produce good dogs, why not benefit a little bit from it? If you can sell off some of your surplus stock, and go into your bills and maybe make a couple of quid, why not? But when you suddenly look at dogs as a viable business opportunity, you're going down the wrong track. Because, if you do it properly, you don't make much money. People always, will quote, wow, in England, Ed Reed, for example, he bought his house with his dogs, and, in the pit bull world, they'll say, well, Chico Lopez was a millionaire. Yeah, well, these are exceptions to the rule. Most people that work, you have, when you're working with animals, you've always got the unexpected. So you're not going to make much money. I think if I read between the lines, what you're asking me is it possible to open a sort of registry or a business sort of around dogs and not go broke? So yes, it's possible, but like I say, when you're getting into the scale of national registries, there's lots of money involved, and there's lots of lots of costs and bits and pieces. So you only have to work out how many breeds of dog there are. For example, in America, how many litters are born a year, how much does a pedigree cost? Suddenly you're getting into huge money. So it depends. If we're talking about, is it possible to do sort of independent clubs and breeds and registries? Yes, it is. Is it a viable business proposition? Not really. Mm-hmm. You can. There are people that make money out of it, but they never really last very long. I can count many, the American Bulldog lot and the Old English Bulldog lot, and people that produce these registries and little clubs, and within 10 years they've vanished. So it's the same old thing. So how long is a piece of string? It depends what we're talking about. Is it possible? Yes. Would I advise it? Probably not. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, what I think is like, this is a passion hobby, you know what I mean? And if you're in it for the long haul, and it's more important that, say, you produce good dogs, or you promote people that produce good dogs, and if that's your focus, I think people will come, and your ability to make a little scratch at the end is more likely, but it can't be your main focus. So that's kind of what I see with a lot of breeders today, especially in the bull breeds. They're out for that glory and that money, and they're not. They may produce a couple good litters, and then all of a sudden they're just mass producing, and it just gets worse from there, and then the breed goes to shit.
It's back to the old cliche about the quantity and quality. I see a lot of people. I mentor a few guys that they want to start and they want to do it right, and and I help these guys out as much as I can. But some of them, you have to be a little bit brutal at the beginning and say, well, don't be thinking that this is a way to give up your day job. This is, producing a line of dogs takes many years, and there are no guarantees, Mm-hmm. You can, again, when you're dealing with livestock, anything can happen. You can... I had one day somebody come to the kennels, and they brought the parvovirus in, and it killed a litter. It wiped out half a dozen dogs easily. a prospect that I'd waited for 3 or 4 years in the UK for this particular breeding. This dog died of the parvovirus that somebody unexpectedly brought in. So it swings and roundabouts, fors and against. If you can break even, it's good, and if you can make a few quid after you've taken everything out and you've done it properly, great. But it's not a given. It's not, I'll take a nice bred female and a nice bred male, and then I'll give up my day job. That's not how it works. So, I mean, again, we've talked about this before. In the age of social media, everybody's a star. Everybody's bling bling. Everybody's kennels are this and their dogs are that, and people get misled. But it's very short lived. This is why we always talk about the pot noodle effect. The instant specialists. You just add water, and then you've got a specialist. So people don't want to spend the time and put in the effort and the years of study to get anywhere. They want it at the click of the drop of a hat. Click your fingers. I'm a specialist. I'm a dogman. I'm this. I'm that. It's a passion that is time consuming. It takes up a lot of time and energy and all the rest of it. It's very rewarding, but there are highs and lows, peaks and valleys. You've got to take it. You've got to be a little bit. How would you say? In retrospect, you've got to be a little bit. I don't know how you'd say. You've got to be a little bit sort of poignant. Have a look at the big picture. Like I say, it's a passion. But if it's done right, you've got to do it right. Don't think you're going to get instant glory and instant this and instant that, because it's very short lived. So this is why I admire the guys from before. But even I was talking to somebody the other day. Even the big names in the kennels in the UK, for example, we're talking about Staffords again. They're slowly dying off. I mean, I had a friend that lived not far away from me, Tony Gareffa, who was Shire staff. And Tony, I met in the 80s, and he had a very nice dog, first champion in the South he had. And this dog was, it was the real deal. Not only a show champion, but it was a real deal, like the old rappery stuff. They could do it all. And I just read recently that Tony passed away. Anne Gattenby from Kerrisdale, she passed away. She was in her 90s. And so slowly but surely, all the big names of the Stafford, for example, are slowly sort of, disappearing. And there's not really the new generation there with enough, solid solidity, big shoulders to carry on the good work. So it's a very strange time at the moment. This Facebook stuff, again, you've got instant specialists, and in 5 years they're no longer there. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe 1 or 2 big kennels, but again, in the old days you had an array of affixes, and you could pick and choose, what you liked. And, you could ring individual people and see, what was the type you liked. Again, we're back to the standard again. Staffordshire Bull Terrier is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, no? Well, not really. They're all different types. You like the heavier sets, you like what type do you like? There will be a breeder, and good breeders will put you on the right path. Well, if you like, the rangier types, you want to go and see this fella over here, he bred some good dogs. But it's becoming less and less now. So people are having less choice. And also what I'm noticing is people today don't really care about the pedigrees. When you're proud and you bring out the pedigrees of your pup and you say, well, look, I've got 7 or 8 generations behind, and there's this dog and there's that dog, people don't really care anymore. So it's the Chinese curse. We're living in interesting times, as they say.
You got to look at it as livestock, and you've got to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And so making a profit off of that is you're lucky. You're lucky. At the end of the day, you're lucky. So I look at it like a business model that you used your dogs, you used your kennel as a promotion of another business. Maybe it's dog related, maybe it's something completely different. But you used your kennel as the promotion tool, and vice versa. It might become a sustainable hobby where you're making a little bit of money, but like you said, it's not going to overtake your day job, unless your other side business that's not directly related to the kennel is profitable.
I mean, that's, we're back into business again. I mean, if you're talking about viable business opportunities, again, you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. You have, for example, in my case, I was a bar owner. I had a bar and a bar restaurant and a shop, and these were based on the theme was the Old Bulldog. That was my first bar. And it was basically to differentiate myself from the Irish pub theme that was in the late sort of 90s, or in France in the 90s, everything was Irish. So as an Englishman opening an establishment, I already bred dogs, and so I thought it would be fun with the old Winston Churchill thing to call it the Old Bulldog. So the first one was the Old Bulldog, and any sort of expat abroad, immediately if you said Bulldog, they would say, oh, must be an English fella that owns that. So I kind of ran that, and then I had the restaurant was opposite the law courts, so I called that the Bulldog and Barrister. And then I had a shop that I called the Bulldog Boutique. So if you like, I had my brand that was turning, but at the same time, my passion, which was my kennels, was to one side and was turning. So again, the first few podcasts we've done together basically explains all that. But it was a classic case of one thing complemented the other. You see what I mean? So I wasn't just relying on dogs. I had, bars and restaurants and all different bits and pieces going on, but all under the same sort of theme. So that worked very well. If you're talking just about kennels, I mean, it's multiple sources of income. Mm-hmm. You've got to be thinking like, what's his face, Warren Buffett. You're talking about you've got to have several sources of income everything you do. So this is why I see people now are into training. There's a lot of the new fashion in France is they've managed to get themselves a training license, and they become trainers. They'll train you on training your dog or opening a kennels, or and so they charge you a fee to train online, or you come to the kennels and I'll train you, and they become, and you say, well, fair play to these people. They are sort of branching out, just having a kennels and making pups. Suddenly you've quickly, gone around the whole thing. So afterwards, what can they do dog related? There are how many sites now that sell dog leads, or dog food, or everything to do with. So yeah, there are many ways. I mean, I see in the States, there are the dog walkers, dog sitters. There are hundreds of businesses around the core thing of dogs. So it's possible to make a living. You've just got to be a bit of an entrepreneur, and and again, got to be honest, and you've got to have good quality product, because why there are so many dog breeders? Because very often, if you breed, let's say you breed a crap dog, the litter is crap, you sell it. People aren't really going to work out that it's crap for at least 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. And in 2 or 3 years, a lot of things can happen. in this day and age, 2 or 3 years is a long marriage, you know. So people are going to be thinking, well, you know, I can knock out 2 or 3 crap litters. And this is the beauty. I mean, again, Instagram, now there's TikTok, Facebook. You can become an instant success overnight. Yeah. Only that doesn't apply to dogs. To be a dogman, you have to, in theory, have proved yourself over many generations of good stock. Mm-hmm. Your business card is your animals. It's living proof that you've done something that's worth a second look. You see what I mean? Yeah. Now, everybody's an instant millionaire or an instant success or an instant something on Facebook because you don't know the truth. You just see nice edited videos and flashy stuff, and so you cross your fingers and you pay your money and you take a chance. But when you're producing livestock, people should, and this is, again, it's the conjurer's trick, it's smoke and mirrors. People are relying on the fact that the most part of people, they're lazy, so they can't be bothered to do their homework to see if the guy in front of them is legit or not. Mm-hmm. You know, how many times have I heard, you've got pups for sale? Yeah, I've got a litter for sale. Yeah, where are you based? Well, I'm based in the middle of France. Oh, no, it's too far. You see what I mean? Yeah. The minute it's too far, I mean, I brought a dog in from Australia 25 years ago, you know? You can't get any further than that. That's the difference. You've got to be willing to go after. Here, it's, I want it now. It's instant gratification. Mm-hmm. Where do you live? Imagine this same person that can't be bothered to travel a couple of hours in his car to come and get something that I've worked on for many years. Imagine he buys a female. In a couple of years, is he really going to look for a decent stud dog for his bitch? Of course not. He's going to look to his neighbour. What's convenient? He's not going to look at pedigrees. He's not going to, break his head and think, yeah, is this mating going to be that? And what's it going to give? He's going to say, well, a friend of mine down the pub, he's got a Stafford. I think I'll mate him to my dog. And that's times that by 1 million. You see what I mean? That's another reason why you can get the quality of a race nosedives very quickly. I mean, I said, from what I'd seen, I was in Italy judging many years ago, and the quality was boff. And I was in Italy a couple of years ago, and the quality is now better than in France. Why? Because there are many breeders that have suddenly taken the subject very seriously and done a thorough selection, and it's night and day. Last time I was there, I was like a kid in a sweet shop. I couldn't believe it. I had 80 dogs to judge, and I've never been happier. It was just one after another. They were fine examples of the breed. But again, that's a long time that I can say that for France. I mean, the last dog show I went to, I left halfway through, So anyway, it's the same old thing. I think we're just in an era now where things are false, and it's all sort of, again, smoke and mirrors, and they rely on the fact that the vast majority of the people aren't as dedicated as maybe they were before. I mean, I waited for my first dog. I waited at least 2-3 years. I couldn't get in. I wasn't part of this inner circle. So I'd ring and they'd say, yeah, who recommended you? Well, nobody. I was only sort of 17, 18 years old. Well, if I don't know you, that's it, phone down. So I couldn't get my foot in the door because I didn't know anyone. Today, it's not like that. Today, if you want a Stafford, you've got 5,000 plus publications, at the click of a finger. So I think it's changed the dynamic. It's changed a lot of things, but again, we're not even talking about the quality of animals. We're just talking in general. In general, I think it's the people that have changed. The mindset has changed. People aren't as fussy maybe as they were. I've travelled in a battered old Ford Escort in the four corners of the UK, going to dog shows to sit on a seat in a cold, drafty hall to watch dogs go up and down the mat. catch a snippet of conversation with, some sort of old fella. This is what I did. That was my apprenticeship. Today, people aren't going to do that. No. Between a couple of Netflix series, they're just going to quickly go on the internet and have a little look about what's about, So it's, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but, things have changed. They're not like they were.